This is the best part, is just watching people.
I like it.
Yeah.
You never tell Jesse what it is in advance, right?
No.
Did you have to go back and find all new music?
I had to start all over.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about this, but we had a fatal fail in terms of hard drives recently. But hey, look, we're here. We're on location in the seaport at the future home of Hook and Line. And when I say we're on location, we're literally not in the office. And it's like the first time we've ever done this. We've taken our show on the road. No live audience, no audience for that matter. It's just the three of us because we're in a construction zone and there aren't even any workers around. And I'm really not sure why we did this. It does follow my general pattern of like making life harder than it needs to be.
And it is really a construction zone. Tom, how far through the build out do you think we are right now? Wait, can I guess?
Yeah.
You probably started swinging hammers 10 weeks ago?
Close, May 1.
Oh.
So this will be the start of the 8th week.
So you're ahead of my schedule. That's great. Kafka's doing good.
Kafka's doing great. Love Kafka.
Listen, I hope this works. Maybe this is definitely a test. Whether or not we want to do this on location, it's good to do this with a friend, because if something goes wrong, I feel like I'm under less pressure. I'd hate to show up at Mayor Wu's office and be like, I don't know if this is going to work. That might be bad. And also to see if I could set up the equipment, see if it would work.
And we'll find out. Drone case.
I was smart. I took the foam out of my drone case and it fit all the equipment perfectly. So we wheeled it on over. And yeah, time will tell whether this works or not, because people will be listening or they won't. We could just have the worst that happens is a conversation with three friends.
But
right?
To be clear, there's no difference for the listener. It's just more of a pain for you.
Yeah. That's why it makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even take a picture of the construction. Like, I'm not even allowed to do that.
Yeah, you can.
For this, are you going to get a one-time exception from your PR person? Because they yelled at me last time.
Yep, they did.
We can take a picture of this.
I got a letter. There was a letter, an email to everybody that was basically like, please don't post pictures of construction. Nobody else had posted pictures of construction but me.
This is pre-alcove opening?
Yeah, so it was a soft way.
It
was here.
This was like recently. 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was a little while ago. I guess you're not supposed to do that, but maybe Tom will let us just take a picture.
Well, in fairness, it was like no wide shots, like close-ups.
Yeah, details only, like studs and stuff that really...
Has this deal been announced? Do people know this is happening?
Yeah, it was public.
Okay.
Yeah. We took headshots and they were printed and published.
It's been in the Globe and stuff.
Oh, music.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And liquor license
it's called,
stuff.
Right.
What? Oh, because of that?
I'm saying...
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's part of the reason we're here to talk, and I don't mean to jump the gun, but like,
no. Spoiler.
This stuff becomes public knowledge at the time of applying.
I need to get the legal stuff out of the way, which I'm sure you can appreciate. This music was by a guy, I don't know, someone called Punch Deck, and it's called I Can't Stop.
Could have been a computer. We don't really know.
Don't know. It's called I Can't Stop. I feel like we needed a banger. And when I heard the title of the song I Can't Stop, it reminded me of our guest, Tom Schlesinger, Guidelli.
I have the same thing with my last name. You know, it used to be hyphenated too, right? You know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it was Baerkahn, and I dropped the hyphen when Ronnie and I got married.
Oh. I don't think I could drop the hyphen on mine.
No. But Bear and Khan.
You do just Schlesinger, right? Sometimes? No. You include the whole thing?
Well, it depends. Like my passport, it's too many characters.
Oh, no kidding.
That's great.
I have no legal identification other than my birth certificate and social security card that say my full name.
Interesting. I changed my name in 3rd grade.
That's not true.
From Andrew to Drew.
But not legally. You just
I don't know if I don't think we did it legally, no. And now that I've gotten older and more into like professional environments, I've been going by Andrew, mostly because people remember it easier. Like, I mean, when I go by Drew, I'd call David, Dan, all sorts of things, D words. But I go by Andrew and people seem to remember Andrew.
What's your best Starbucks coffee name?
Well, I don't get coffee.
Oh, yeah, you don't drink
That's
coffee.
A bad one. And if I went in, I'd make up a name anyway.
Don't you drink these mochas now?
From Tate, yeah. But I give him my full name. I say Drew. And I have to spell it.
Hold on. That's not your full name.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I told you it's my full name now.
Oh.
I changed in 3rd grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're also a little scary on a mocha.
Yeah, I get it. Really. I don't need it.
No.
I mean, on a Monday, I feel like I'm dragging a little bit, but I really don't need it. Yeah. I wanted to be called Rick, but my middle name's Eric. And Rick Eric, my parents were like, that sounds ridiculous.
I don't hate it.
Rick Eric.
Yeah, I like it. Rick Eric Katz.
Rick Eric Katz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they said, listen, if you want a shorter name, we can do Drew. I said, okay, Drew. So they actually enrolled me in school with Drew.
Nice.
So thanks for coming in. All right, everybody. It's a good episode. But Tom, what's going on now? Like, how far along are we? We talked about, what are we, 10 weeks in?
8.
8 weeks in, but how much more is left to go? And explain the scene. What are we looking at?
Okay. Well, we're looking at a 7,600 square foot vanilla box, I guess is the way you look at it when you start the process.
I hear that term often.
I would say this was a cold, dark shell, technical real estate word, because there's nothing in here.
Yeah. No, there wasn't.
You're getting
anything.
closer to a vanilla box, but not quite there yet. Keep going.
And, it's a really unique building in the Seaport District. It's in between, Strega, that was one of the early adopters of the neighborhood, and Davio's, which is a more recent addition, overlooking the wharf that the ICA is on, which is a pretty cool part of the city. And even like last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess, coming down here and watching the Red Bull cliff diving off of it was like really cool thing. But it's under construction. We're almost finished with studs, and which means in the next week or so, we'll go through rough plumbing and electrical, and then the walls will start to close up.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just a bunch of metal studs basically shaping out the room.
Yeah. Some plumbing's in.
Most of the plumbing's in, most of the electrical, like most of the rough plumbing and electrical are in.
What are the next big hurdles?
Well, we're waiting on a bunch of like really big equipment pieces. So all the heat pumps, the fans that have to go on the, it's an 18-story building, and we have to put 2 different fans on the roof for the exhaust system in the kitchen. So I want you to try to get the drone.
Yeah, we were talking about seeing if we could capture this even so close to the airport to see if it's possible.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen these things go up on tall roofs before?
Well, that's crane.
Yeah, we need to take one of the streets and block it off for a day and have a crane come in.
By the way, it should be said, just again, I mean, the location here is pretty amazing. It's very exciting. And it's a cool, relative to all of the flat-faced buildings in the Seaport, I think architecturally this is a neat building too.
Yeah, particularly this edge,
yes.
this facade.
Yes.
So, when you look at construction for something like this, you think of it as 6 walls, the 4 walls and the floor and the ceiling, and 3 of the walls here are all glass, basically, even though it's...
Does that pose problems in the design when you're sort of laying things out?
I don't think we looked at it as a problem. I think we were attracted to the architecture that Jesse's describing, and I think that was one of the really compelling pieces. I think you talk to the framers about it, and they say this is one of the more interesting jobs they've framed in a while, because we really wanted to bring the curvature of the building into the space. And so we put this curved soffit along the front edge of it, which has a couple of different heights to it as well. And is also intended to like accentuate the light in the space. So I think we looked at it as a design opportunity rather than a challenge necessarily.
My first reaction also, I mentioned to Tom when I walked in, and he toured me on this almost half-built space, is that it's long, right? So like we're so used to going into restaurants that are narrow and deep, especially in the urban context. And in Boston, you see very few restaurants that are this long. So it's going to be a really special. I mean, it's going to be really interesting for people when they walk in here and they have to look left and have to look right to get a sense of the restaurant, which is exciting.
Yeah, and it allows us to create really intimate spaces within what is a pretty big space.
And you'll enter in the middle, which I also think is unique.
Yeah.
So you'll have, all right, let's get this thing open. This is exciting.
What are some other plans for the space? I know there's the market, sort of something you can talk about.
Yeah, the market's going to be great. So one of the first time we toured the space, we came down and there's a huge park right outside. There are probably 500 or 600 people having lunch. And I said, we need to do something with sort of the quick service style that you see so prominently.
So at the end of one of the sort of the long space, there'll be a market, which I think helps kind of divide it into thirds, so you don't have to have the restaurant go so far down.
Yeah, and I even think of it as 4s, but as 4 distinct spaces with the private dining room, the main dining room, and then the bar area. But
plus the market.
Right?
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so the market has, sort of 2 goals. Goal 1 is you want lunch in the neighborhood, you can stop in and grab a lobster roll or, salads, etc. And goal 2 is if you're in the neighborhood and you want to have a beautiful piece of fish for dinner, you can stop in and we'll have a fishmonger in there who, it brings back sort of the heart and soul of these neighborhood fish markets or butchers that I think have disappeared from the fiber of our communities in many ways. And also, like, this is a newer neighborhood in this context, and I think there's a really savvy, the people who live down here are really savvy and want, boutique food offerings in all aspects of their life, not just in their restaurants.
It's funny because we are so close to the water, but you still are more likely to run across like a butcher with like meat versus a fishmonger. I feel like. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, can you think of any other fishmongers or like
around here?
Yeah.
No.
The only two that, like, the two most prominent ones are in Cambridge, within 2 blocks of each other.
Yeah.
In Huron Village, right?
Well,
in East Cambridge. You're thinking New Deal?
I was thinking New Deal.
New Deal.
Yeah.
They have one next to the old Formaggio. I forget the name of it. It's good.
It's not. I don't think it's there anymore.
Oh, that's right, because they vacated that building.
Yeah.
But I think it's just worth for our listeners. This is Fan Pier. This is like the
10 Fan Pier.
10 Fan Pier. Mass Mutual's headquarters above us. So we're kind of in the middle building between the water's edge buildings, or I guess I would say the marina edge buildings. And yeah, I think this was the last piece of Fan Pier, right? This building.
This was the final building. To be built.
It's so crazy.
And for the other thing I would just say is, interestingly, Fan Pier is the project in the Seaport, in addition to District Hall, that really kicked off the development here when Vertex moved down. So this is all pre-WS's stuff, this project, Fan Pier. And this is the last building of Fan Pier. So big milestone for Fallon, the developer.
Yep.
And for the Seaport generally.
Well, I feel like we've officially made it worthwhile that we came down here now that we've talked about the space.
Well, not really.
Now that we're on location.
In the office.
Thanks, Jesse.
Well, no,
you mean he could have just pretended that we were in the space?
Oh, you mean talking about the actual physical space versus the location?
Hey, look at that wood over there.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of plywood. What's going on over there?
You're right, Drew.
I do want to take one of these Skyjacks around for a ride after this. I'm sure no one will have a problem with that.
Let's do that when there's a supervisor around.
Oh, really? I thought you do that without the supervisor.
Before we move on,
We don't have to move on.
One other thing I was going to say.
Free flowing right here.
Overall timeline. So just walk us through what it took
Good.
to get to where we are now, where we go from here until opening. Because I think just for listeners, understanding how long these deals take is really interesting.
I first toured the space in May of 2021, and we're in
2 years ago,
June of 2023. So, and we won't be open. I think we'll open in the fall. Everybody wants me to put a date on the calendar, and it's like,
when you saw this space, was it like, this is the one? Or was it like, okay, I've got these 6 spaces. What do I do?
I wasn't looking.
Okay.
Like, you have to understand, May of 2021, I haven't been serving in my restaurant for a full year since COVID hit. Like, we weren't 12 full months back into table service. And there was a deal in place here for a chain restaurant out of California.
Obviously, California Pizza Kitchen, the only one I can think of.
No, but and I don't know how much of this I'm allowed to talk about, but I would assume this is all okay.
I think it's out there. Yeah.
And the deal fell through, clearly.
Yeah.
And my commercial real estate broker said, there's one space in the Seaport. I think the deal's going to fall through. And if you're going to go down there, this to me is the space you should take.
Yeah.
And
so you knew you wanted to be down here.
I didn't know I wanted to be down here.
Okay.
I actually didn't think I wanted to be down here at all, to be really honest. I was really struggling with. Well, let me explain the pitch we made, because I think
shout out to Chris Mern, right?
Shout out to Chris Mern.
Nice job, Chris.
Yep. Visionary.
There you go. See, it's important. Mm-hmm. All right, keep going, Tom.
And I really didn't think I wanted to be down here at all. I felt a lot of the ways I think that people felt about this neighborhood back then, which was a lot of chain restaurants, is a ton of stuff still under construction. So you really didn't understand if the buildings were going to fill in. I got a statistic from the mayor's office. It's like a year or two. I was talking to somebody in the mayor's office, and they said In 5 years, this will surpass the Back Bay as the most populous neighborhood in Boston, which was like a pretty flooring statistic to me. But you don't know that the WS development that you're describing, people are actually going to rent and buy the condos in. And so, it was hard to tell what the neighborhood was. And Nautilus wasn't open, and Woods Hill, had opened
right before
the pandemic. And, and I don't think Davio's was open yet either at this point. So you're sort of like...
And a lot of the WS stuff was also in flux at that time 2 years ago.
And I toured a bunch of the WS stuff
yes.
at the same time. And it felt too far from the water for me. One of the things about Alcove that I love is we're on the water. And, basically the pitch we made, once I decided that I liked this space and that we wanted to be down here, which was a series of things that occurred, seeing more and more independent restaurant operators come down here and the neighborhood fill in with more people. And, as I learned more about the neighborhood, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm interested down there. And so.
And what's that amount of time? I mean, are we into 2022 yet? Does it take that long for you to?
When did Nautilus open? Like November of 21?
So months had gone by.
It sounds about right. But that probably gave you a little more confidence because they've been.
Yeah, that definitely gave me a little bit more confidence. Yeah.
Dave would know that. November 21? Yeah, maybe.
I looked at a couple of things with Dave at one point down here too.
Yeah.
And I just was having a hard time feeling like what I wanted to do, which is, I feel like the biggest part of Alcove is that we're a neighborhood restaurant and that we're there all day, every day for you, year round. Whether it's, a business meeting or a Celtics game or Christmas, we are there all the time.
Thanksgiving. Alcove is our spot to go for Thanksgiving, Jesse. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that.
My whole family goes 2 or 3 years.
2 years in a row.
At least 2. Yeah.
Thank you. We love having you.
Thank you for having us. No one else would. We've been kicked out of every other restaurant.
But I felt like I wanted to be if I was going to open another restaurant, I wanted to do it in a neighborhood that I wanted to be a good neighbor in. And as I saw this become more of a neighborhood, I wanted to be down here more. And then Chris kind of ushered us into this space at this time and said, I think you should look at this. And I walked into the space and I was like, if we're going to do it, this is it. And the other thing to say about the space that I don't think I mentioned this to you yet, but this was originally supposed to be split into 2 spaces. And so there's 2 black iron ducts.
Oh,
and so I had wanted to do wood fire for the next restaurant.
Right. Because if you're going to do 2 different fuel sources,
you need 2 separate. Gotcha.
Nice, Drew. Nailed it.
Gotcha.
So that was really an attractive additional component to the space.
So the infrastructure was set up for 2 restaurants. They need 2 vertical
But don't they have
runs.
to be next to each other? I mean, like I imagine since they had subdivided
they're 15 feet apart.
So they just somehow pipe them together or whatever.
No. They're not piped together. That's the point. There are 2 separate vertical runs.
So that was a sort of additional like,
you can do it.
Let's kick the can on this a little bit further. And then as we got into it, we found out that basically we were competing with a bunch of chain restaurants. Yeah. And I said to Mern, I said, if we're going to do this, we have to meet people at Mass Mutual and have to like start the process of introducing ourselves and introducing what our neighborhood hospitality is to them. And ultimately that, won out. And a lot of times these deals come down to sort of 1 or 2 decision makers, even though there's a huge team of people behind these large.
Still about humans.
But it's still about humans. Yeah. And, it was a lesson I learned from Alcove, honestly. Like the person I signed the lease with for Alcove left 2 weeks after we signed the lease, or actually I think 2 months before we signed the lease, excuse me. So we had negotiated this whole deal, and 2 months before we signed the lease, he left, and a new guy came in from New York, and we went and had coffee one day, and he told me his wife was a food blogger in New York, but they didn't know where to go eat in Boston. And I spent an hour after that and just wrote down, the Johnny Cake at Neptune's, one of my favorite dishes, and go to Flower for this, and Tate for this, and the dumplings at Myers and Chang, and just a list of like some of my favorite food and beverage institutions in Boston. it ended up getting passed around the office. It ended up being this like really sort of transformative moment in my relationship with Will. And, you know, I sort of thought, okay, well, we need to take a similar approach and we need to look out for an opportunity like that to occur. And I would say that the same opportunity didn't occur, but others did. And we were able to demonstrate what our brand of hospitality is through that process.
And Tom, I assume the landlord's willingness on both these deals, or the landlord rep, right? Those individuals, those humans, to meet you, to be open to hearing about the hospitality you provide, to make that connection. That also makes the deal more attractive to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, and this just bore out with COVID.
Right.
Right.
But many of our clients don't really understand. That's not true. Some of our clients don't fully understand how important, because it goes both ways, the connection with the prospect, the tenant, is on a personal relationship, and how meaningful that is, and what that does to facilitate trust, which is huge in these landlord-tenant relationships.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is if you've created a positive relationship before you hit a snag,
yes,
when you hit the snag, you can turn to each other and be calm about it and not be like, this guy's trying to screw me over.
Yeah.
Right. And you can say, okay, well, like, this is why I'm coming at it from this side, and this is why you're coming at it from this side.
And you're more willing to be transparent, which is what every landlord wants.
When something like COVID happens, you have good relationship, good conversations, and try to figure it out together. Right. What takes a year then? Okay, hey, let's move forward. And now construction starts May 2023. What's the holdup?
Well, we didn't sign a lease for a full year.
And that's just because of going back and forth, negotiating.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse can speak to this more accurately and probably more quickly than I can, but you sign a LOI, letter of intent, that gives you the framework for the deal. And then you go back and forth about like where trash is going to go. And like, if you go into bankruptcy, how are you going to get out of it? And can you sell off your equipment with a sale within the space? Like, these are really not fun things to talk about for the most part, but you know, everybody's familiar with a prenup. Basically, you're writing the prenup.
And all these deals are taking longer. I think the transactions are taking longer now.
Why?
The why is a good question. I think we've gone through a pandemic. We've seen something that is, quote, unforeseeable happen. I think that even right now, there's a lot of ambiguity in the market from a capital and financing perspective. Permitting and liquor licensing, which we'll talk about, everything is taking longer. I actually think one of the things that's making things take longer on the municipal level is just staffing for cities, right? So it all comes back to staffing.
So the processes are just slower.
Things are just taking longer. We used to be able to go, you know, Tom mentioned it's going to be close to 2.5 years from the time he toured his space until he opens. I would say that's probably longer than our ordinary deal. But 2 years is kind of within the ballpark. 5-10 years ago, we would recommend to our clients, let's really get out there and start leasing a space, 12 to 18 months before to get somebody open. And now, it's not unreasonable to start to get out there 2 years before. The major challenge, though, is if you couldn't have toured this space and been in it and felt it and seen the windows and the walls and the physical space, you wouldn't have leased it.
Well,
Fair?
No.
Oh, interesting.
But I would say I'm unique in that way. So Alcove had no skin on the building when I saw it.
But the structure was there.
You could feel the structure, but it
wasn't a piece of dirt.
It was not a piece of dirt. Yes.
Because we can't lease to restaurateurs pieces of dirt.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the challenge is if a construction cycle is 2 years and somebody wants to get going.
So the space is empty once it's done, basically, is what you're saying. There's no way to just, as soon as the building opens, to have a restaurant in place.
Well, that's the challenge right now. We're of the opinion that until you can put a hard hat on and be in a space, doesn't need the windows or the storefront, you just need to feel it. There are very few restaurateurs out there that are going to lease that space, right? And, it's just kind of connecting the dots from a timeline perspective, because if you're then 18 months out from delivering a building, but these deals take 2 years, how do you open with the building? So anyways, I didn't answer your question. Things are taking longer for a multitude of reasons right now.
One thing I definitely want to talk about, which I know also slows down the process, is liquor license, right? I mean, somebody needs to explain to me how you get a liquor license in the city of Boston? Like what that transaction is all about.
Before Tom goes there, though, just to be clear, you're never going to go out there and spend the time and the energy and the resources to get that liquor license till you sign the lease.
For sure. And then you've got to raise the money.
So think LOI, lease, fundraising probably kicks off in a soft way before you sign the lease. You're putting feelers out, but you need to sign the lease.
But you need to secure a liquor license before you're willing to sign the lease.
You have to.
No, the opposite.
It's the opposite.
So it stretches everything out.
And you can't technically, because you have to do an SEC filing for how these limited liability corporations are set up, right?
By the way, excuse the noise. I'm going to take my sweatshirt off. It's hot in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ooh.
No, I like that. It's good for this.
Okay,
it's
so
great.
people get it.
It makes it feel like we're on location.
Tom, keep going. Timing.
I need somebody to drop an F-bomb in the background, because they fell or something.
So because you have to do an SEC filing, part of that has to be the lease. You need that as a component piece of what your offering is.
Okay.
So then, and this is something that I think landlords are not super inclined to, is you need to go out and finance, and then simultaneously you need to start planning the design phase, and then you also need to secure a liquor license. Well, you can't secure a liquor license until you've finished the financing phase, because every one of your investors has to go through a query check, has to go through a background check.
Criminal record.
Yeah.
Just because of the liquor license.
Because you're selling alcohol.
Yeah.
And they don't want former criminals to be making money off of controlled substances. So it's a little bit like you can push each one forward 10%, then 20%, but you kind of have to have all three going at the same time. And you're spending money. Right? So like you're spending money on the lawyer to get the lease ready. You're spending money on the licensing lawyer trying to find the license. You're spending money on the contractor. You're spending money on the architect, because you got to, with the contractor, you got to pay pre-construction costs. But you really need the contractor engaged before you've signed the lease, because part of the lease is the work letter that you're receiving from the landlord.
And you're not going to sign a lease until you know what something costs you to build. So this sequencing of all of these steps.
It sounds like a nightmare.
In new construction. Whew.
Yeah. So, then you put in contingencies of, we're going to have the permitting done for the architectural drawings done by X date, and you're going to have the financing done by Y date. And then that Y date is going to trigger you then going to the ABCC. It takes a month. You have to put up a notice and have a neighborhood meeting. And then you have to put a notice in the paper separate from that for a month out. So the first one is all the abutters. Mm-hmm. Then the next one is
neighborhood.
It's the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And then the next one is a month out, or it might be 2 weeks, something like that. You have to put a notification in the Herald, which I always find funny. You can't put it in the Globe. It's required to be the Herald, but it is what it is. And
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just the Herald. And then you have to go before the city ABCC board. And that's where you have your hearing. And that's usually where, if there was a problem, that the problem is going to arise. It's not always where the problem arises, though. And then typically they say that takes 4 to 6 weeks from when the board votes, which the board votes the next day, technically. And then they send it on to the state. The state then takes all the investor information, does the background checks that we were just talking about. And then eventually, once the state has done its investigation, it goes to the state's board to vote, but the state board can't ask the investigators any questions at that point. And usually that's pretty fast. That's usually a week
just so
or
you can sell a beer.
And then if you've done bank financing of any sort, right? The bank financing typically is a lien on the license, right? So if you put in a minimum fundraising requirement within your lease as a contingency, you haven't met your minimum financing contingency until you've received the license and you've been able to close on the bank loan. So you have to close on the bank loan and the license simultaneously.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting is when we first started in this business, you could build a restaurant for a couple $100 a square foot.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, like there's timing and there's money, and they're kind of all related. So if you're off by 10 or 20% on a $220 a square foot build out, there are ways you can figure it out. These build outs these days, $700-800 a square foot. You're off by 10-20%. Forget it. So the numbers are so much bigger, right? The amount of money you have to raise, so it's just, I think because the numbers are so much bigger, that's just one of the reasons that things are tighter. People are more careful. They're not willing to go ahead in the same way without the certainty they need, right? Because you get caught, and it's slowing things down.
Yeah. I mean,
understandably.
Full transparency, I just went out on one of those limbs for this.
Yeah.
And lived there by myself for 6 weeks. And it was not fun. And thankfully we're through that. It's all squared away. But it was, that's why we're 8 weeks into construction. We should be 2 weeks into construction. And that's because I wanted to get open 6 weeks
And
earlier.
your risk tolerance is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
And many of our landlords will say, well, we're not ready to, we need to know the money's there, because guess what? If you get caught, Tom, who are you coming back to?
Yeah.
Us, the landlord.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's easy, Drew.
Well, I still don't know where the liquor license comes from, like how that even gets involved, how you get into that. I don't know.
Well, the policy question is, why do we have to go through all of this to serve somebody an alcoholic beverage?
Okay, that's one question. But the other one is, where is the liquor license? Like, how do you find one? It's not like the city just doles them out. Like, oh, you've done this whole process. Here you go.
Well, and this is probably where I shoot myself in the foot a little bit right now. But I mean, the Globe just put out a big article on liquor licenses coming to the seaport from communities of color, right?
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, I got lucky. Mine wasn't from a community of color. Mine was from a downtown crossing bar.
So you basically just...
It's capped. There are only a certain amount of liquor licenses in Boston.
Yeah, pretend I don't know anything about this, because I don't know anything about this.
It's like 1,500, give or take.
Yeah.
Hasn't changed
But
in
are they all
decades.
taken?
Yes, assume they're all being used.
You cannot, legally speaking, you cannot sit on a license in a dormant space.
Right. You have to be operating.
You're supposed to be. I will say there are murmurs in the community that the city has not been as diligent on that particular subject matter as they were prior to COVID, which I
think it's a fact. I think there's no doubt there are these these licenses out there people aren't using, and the city is technically supposed to force those parties.
What would be an acceptable, and we're getting off topic here, but what would be an acceptable reason to do that? Maybe, hey, I'm going to open another restaurant. It's taking me a year to get it going, so I don't want to lose it. So you just kind of keep it.
Yeah, they want to encourage people to sell them. But the process, there's a bigger issue beyond that, which is, why do we have this hyper-regulated capped market in the first place? Yeah, but we do. That's the paradigm we're in.
Yeah, but I think it's probably easiest for people listening to think of this as a taxi medallion.
Exactly.
Right. There's so many badges out there.
And what is Uber and now Lyft were disruptors to what that action was, or what that hindrance was. And I don't know. I don't see an obvious way to be a disruptor to that. But
I'm still fascinated by the fact that you basically, as soon as their business dies, they must get swarmed by all these new businesses that want to buy their liquor license. Can that business just sell it for whatever they want? I mean, is there a bidding war? Like, how do you obtain it from a restaurant that goes out of business?
Well, in theory, it's supply demand. The only way you can get a license is if somebody else has closed their business, or you make them an offer that entices them to sell you their license. Problem is, the information is not shared appropriately. It's not truly a free market, because the information
it's not put on a public board.
Yeah, the information is not fully out there.
Yeah.
It's controlled by a small handful of gatekeepers and attorneys and brokers, and it's incredibly inequitable for so many different reasons.
Yeah, you need to know who to go to. You need to know how to do it.
Well, but also the other piece is, if you are a restaurant owner who owns a liquor license and has a 10-year lease on a space, and you're closing after 16 months or 18 months, and you put all this money into it and all this equipment and stuff, you want to sell the lease as well as the license. You want value for the rest of the space. And so if you hold the license in that space, you're trying to find the right buyer who wants to buy the whole package, not just the license package, because you can make more money.
So that's a reason why it just doesn't move around as frequently. I see. So wherever you got it from, it seems like no one had any plans for that space, or they would have tried to hold on to it longer, I assume.
Probably.
Yeah. So you basically make an offer and you buy it, and that process is probably not easy. There's probably a lot of going back and forth. Is there ever...
That process is actually, of all of it, it's kind of the quickest.
It's a very simple purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah, it's 1-page document.
I'm going to pay you X hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's contingent upon municipal and state approval.
Yeah.
I was going to ask what the going rate was, but I don't know, maybe.
So right now, we're seeing them sell in the high fives. And I think there are a few that probably will sell for $600,000, which is insane.
You're going to break 600 this year.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why we have no great neighborhood restaurants in Boston, folks.
It's also why we have no small ethnic restaurants. Like why
Bingo.
Every component piece of this filters down to what many people complain is a sort of the same restaurant in every neighborhood.
And by the way, I don't mean to say there are some good neighborhood restaurants in Boston, but to be clear...
Thanks, Jesse.
Yes, you're welcome. Alcove being one of them. But to be clear, no one is opening, and we talked about this in the office the other day when Tom was by, and I was talking about this great restaurant that I've frequented in Brooklyn over the last 15 years that's 40 seats. It has a full liquor license, a beautiful place, beautiful food, people can make a living. That will never happen in Boston right now. It is impossible.
What are they doing differently?
Well, you don't have to spend $600,000 on a liquor license.
So similar process, but the demand is, there's more of it.
How do you pay back $600,000 on 40 seats, Drew?
You don't.
No, I know.
It's game over.
Right. And so part of what they tried to do to fix this was create these cordials licenses and these beer and wine only licenses, which are much less expensive, but it's not the same product.
Yeah. This is like a massive, not only is an equity issue, which the articles shed great light on, just draining these licenses from communities with, historically marginalized communities with predominantly Black and brown owned businesses. But it's a massive, in addition, community economic development issue for the city, which I think the Wu administration's on top of, but without the support at the State House, which, our dear friend Nick Korn is working on some legislation. There was a big article in the Globe about it recently. We're in trouble as a community, as a restaurant community, in my opinion.
Well, I actually think as a development community as well, because if retail, if classic retail is dead or dying, right, because of online shopping, then what else are you putting in these spaces?
Yeah. And we're just adding more and more real estate.
And
it adds time too. That's the other part.
Yeah.
Like it just adds time.
Over COVID, you had written an article, I think, about a way of buying back licenses.
Well, I think part of it is,
how would that work?
You would use some of the federal stimulus dollars.
So specific to that occasion, actually.
Yeah, and I actually don't love it, but it was like, the reason there's a very large and very powerful group of restaurateurs and professionals working in the space that don't want to see this market opened up. And they're fighting pretty aggressively, and many restaurateurs for good reason. And I totally hear this argument.
What would be an against reason to do? I mean,
I spent $400,000 on my liquor license, and all of a sudden you're going to flood the market with a whole bunch of licenses for anyone to get. That takes something I spent $400,000 on, like taxi cab medallions, and all of a sudden it's worth $50,000. It's a legitimate argument.
It is, except for the argument really needs to be understood one step further, which is we also have a fiduciary responsibility to our investment groups. So it is not in the best interest of current restaurant owners to create change in this context.
Correct. Have something of value.
It's like
a
an
new
asset.
system would wipe out the value of that. So the idea was you use some of the federal stimulus money. If you're really looking at this as an equity and a community economic development issue, use some of that money to buy back those negotiable, transferable liquor licenses, and then change the whole system, make them all no value, non-transferable. That was the idea.
And I've always been of the mindset of you make them all no value, non-transferable post the buyback, and that you put fees on the number of seats.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm doing the math, by the way, what it would cost, but that is interesting. It's a lot of money.
Like $5 billion or something?
No, it's not. But it's in the dozens and dozens of millions of dollars.
Right. So somebody's got to put that money up. Okay, well, it seems like the place that hold on. There's a couple more things that need to be said before we dive all the way into this. Number one, this is for Boston proper. This does not include Somerville or Cambridge.
Right.
This is a historic cap issue that the city council does not have control over. The state does. The state has control over it. So if the city council can request and propose additional licenses to the state, but then it has to go to the state house and the state house has to vote on it. So if you're the state rep from Somerville or Cambridge, you don't want more licenses in Boston proper. So it's a very complicated issue that doesn't have direct control, that the city does not have direct control over. But if you were to say, okay, we're gonna allow this to be figured out. The city's gonna pay back everybody at, say, the price they paid for their license plus inflation, right? Because some people have owned their license for 100 years.
Correct.
Right? However, you're to figure out what that equation is to try to make that fair for everybody. The city has to make its money back at some point in that way. And if you can use the city as a bank in this context and think of it as, okay, every year we pay a fee for our license.
Like how Cambridge does it.
And so you pay, but I think Cambridge is a flat fee. I don't think Cambridge is by seat.
It's not. It's a flat. I think Cambridge right now is like $12,000 a year.
It's not
based on what? It's flat for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, the new commissioner has made every license in Cambridge effective a few years ago, no value, non-transferable. Even if you owned one, they're all no value, non-transferable, and you pay a fee to the city.
So I'm not an advocate of that.
Especially as you just spent, go on.
But I am an advocate of having the licenses bought back and then of saying, okay, we want to, this mom and pop 25 seat restaurant wants to serve liquor and you pay, I don't know, $200 a year per seat or whatever.
Right.
I don't know what that number is, but over 10 years, let's say, all that value gets paid back to the city in that context.
So you're saying all the new license holders under no value, non-transferable license, the fee they pay back to the city gets distributed to the folks that lost the value in their licenses?
That's not what I was saying, but sure. No,
but
that could work too.
Yeah.
I mean, what I was saying was more the city puts the money up front to pay for all of these purchased transferable licenses.
Yep.
They make everything non-transferable. And by non-transferable, we mean I can't sell the license to somebody else. The city has control over what licenses are and are not approved because the city needs to say this person can't have another license because they're a bad actor, right? The city needs enough control over that to be able to say that. But then over time, every license holder in the city pays an annual fee based off of the number of seats.
Got it.
Which makes sense because if you have a small restaurant, why are you paying the same amount to a huge restaurant next door? I mean,
yeah, and I think the compromise that currently is hopefully going to go to a vote in the State House relatively soon, hopefully this year, is that because there are all these entrenched interests and people who've paid a lot of money for licenses in places like the Seaport who don't want to see that liquor license be completely devalued, is that, in the 10 zip codes that have, you can count the liquor license on a handful, they're largely communities of color, that you would have no value non-transferable licenses in those 10 zip codes. And it actually wouldn't touch zip codes like Back Bay and the Seaport and the South End, right? And it's largely being looked at as a way of stimulating economic development and facilitating more equity. I think that is very much palatable and really should pass as a first measure and doesn't impact entrepreneurs who paid a lot of money for these licenses.
Well, and there's actually data to that doesn't impact because
correct.
10 years ago, Ayanna Pressley pushed this through the city council and then through the state house. And what was it, 150?
Yeah, most of them went to the same usual suspect. White guy restaurateurs represented by the same law firms. But we can do better this time. But that didn't impact the values.
It didn't impact the value. Yeah. And I'm not trying to speak on where they went. I'm just saying that the fear of flooding the marketplace is
not real.
And if we're talking realistically that it takes 2 years to get a restaurant open, the amount of time it's going to take for that to filter out anyways is going to be a lot longer than people are realistic about. A big part of what turned me, two things, right? We spent a lot of time in the process talking about the landlords from a timeline perspective. I think the landlords need to get involved in this issue sooner rather than later, unless they want to continue to shell out more and more money.
Yes. And give people more and more time.
Which, it's confusing to walk the landlords through the process that you need time-wise.
We just did a deal in the Fenway with a very sophisticated capital partner, developer team, and just walking through the timeline exhibit for the lease, for good reason. They were like, no, this can't be right. It takes that long. It's like, yes, it takes that long.
Yep.
And we've got to be conservative because it could take longer.
And construction's taking longer.
Yeah.
Like everything is taking longer, costing more.
I agree with you. It's a huge issue. Landlords need to be paying attention to this.
The other thing is I came to this conclusion before being an asset holder. And I went to a few of my friends who at the time were and continue to be asset holders. And they were the ones who pointed out the fiduciary responsibility piece to me. And I think they're right, but it hasn't changed my opinion that it needs to be fixed, because I was a 35-year-old, longtime restaurant professional who was trying to enact my dream of opening my first restaurant, and sat in a city council hearing where the head of the Mass Restaurant Association at the time stood up and said, we don't want any more licenses. And so I think I've talked to the Mass Restaurant Association a lot about this issue over the years. And I'm excited for the new leadership, who I think is much more active in trying to find fixes for these issues. But that burned me really hard. Like that was, I felt really, you can still hear me talk about how painful that was, because, not everybody can pull $500,000 together. And so we're losing out on a lot of creativity, and we are shedding talent that doesn't need to go elsewhere. And when you talk about the staffing issues and you talk about the creativity of the city, it's not that it's not here. It's not that it's not available. It's that we are putting up unnecessary blockades to that being shared with the world. And this is the biggest hurdle of all of them, in my opinion.
Jesse, we do have a sponsor for this episode. Can you believe that? Finally, all this hard work is
keep going.
off.
I'm curious where this is going to go.
You haven't gotten the check yet for the sponsorship? All right. Well, it's Sally Sebring Seashore Shack and Shop. Situated on the Saskatchewan shore, Sally Sebring Seashore Shack and Shop showcases shellfish and has seashells for sale right off the ship. So if you have a soft spot for the shelly species and want something shell-like to savor, stay from sunrise to sunset and share a shockingly fun sojourn with your spouse or special soul. Don't be sheepish or shy. It'll be swell at Sally Sebring Seashore Shack and Shop. So stop over and see you soon. Shabbat shalom.
I would actually clap, but you'll get mad at me if I clap, won't you?
Hey, it's a real sponsorship. You can't make fun of it.
Sweating now. What was that? That was impressive.
Thanks, Sally's. It's now time for Drew's restaurant gripes.
You need lead-in music.
I'm going to have music playing right now.
Yeah.
It's time for Drew's restaurant gripes. Every time Tom comes in, Drew complains about restaurants. He tells us if Drew's crazy or not.
Is that what happens when you guys get together? The first 5 minutes, Drew complains about restaurant
I do a lot of complaining.
I always hear about his last dining experience.
Oh, Tom, I went to, and then 2 minutes.
Is that your impression of me? It's pretty good.
I wasn't trying to impress. Was that good? No.
Yeah. No. All right.
I know at least one of these already.
So look.
And I agree with that.
I've had some experiences lately. I'm bringing these things up, putting myself out there for Jesse to either make fun of or for Tom to just shoot me down that I'm being overly, thinking about this too much. But I'm going to go for it. Here we go. Not being allowed to order apps or starters without putting in the whole order. Recently, I went to a restaurant with some friends. We're catching up. We hadn't been together in a really long time. There's no way we were going to order food for 15 to 20 minutes. It was just, it's too active. You know, it's like you see friends for a long time. The last thing you're going to do is, okay, guys, it's good to see you, but let me get to this menu, right? The server kept coming by every 4 or 5 minutes. Would you guys are you ready to order? Finally, I said, look, you've been here enough. Maybe we'll just order some oysters and some snacks, and then oh no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. I said, what? What do you mean? We have to put in the whole order at once, the kitchen,
You could have ordered cocktails though, I bet.
Well, we ordered cocktails.
Okay, so they were allowed you to, okay.
Correct.
Go on, I'm just trying to get the sense of.
Which, yes, correct.
Okay.
Well, what ends up happening is and Tom, you'll have a second, but what happens is by the 4th or 5th time, I look at the person and I go, look, man, you're not going to get an order from us. Like, we are still catching up. So you can either start us off or it's going to be a while. And they finally whispered, I'm happy to put in some snacks or some appetizers for you, because I think it was just like, it was dragging. I think they could tell we were getting frustrated by all the visits. Is this a reasonable thing to ask? To be able to put in some food and course it yourself?
So this is the one I knew was coming. And I agree with you.
First of all, has this happened to you before? Anybody here? Is it just me?
It's happened to me.
It's happened to me.
Okay. All right. Okay. So at least it's not just me. Go ahead.
I personally think it's a ridiculous action of the restaurant. I think it's outside of the realm of hospitality. I think it's bad service. But
tell me why they do that.
But there's a couple of different reasons why they do it. The one I think makes the most sense is, a lot of times entrees take a lot longer to cook than apps do, and so simply put, 2 things will occur if you order apps and then entrees rather than apps and entrees. The first thing that will occur is the amount of time that you're sitting at the table will be a lot longer. And so restaurants want to turn tables, right? Yep. It's a business. It's pretty simple. The second thing that's going to happen is you are going to get aggravated when your chicken, which takes 35 minutes to cook, takes 35 minutes from when you put that order in. From when the server rang the order in. So you're now 40 minutes between courses. And now you as a guest are also annoyed with the restaurant. So do I think it's good practice as a whole? No, I do not. Do I understand where it comes from? Yes. Do I think that you're a uniquely savvy diner to this question, Drew? And, there are restaurants. There are
this is a compliment, I think, sort of.
There are small plate restaurants in this city that I will course myself out at, because
I do too.
Because I don't want to have a 40-minute dining experience.
Correct. And I get mad at Mindy because she orders too quickly, too fast.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, we'll do this. I'm like, that's good. That's good for now. Because I feel like they're not going to course it properly.
But those restaurants' service model is based off of put up 5 of this, put up 5 of this, put up 5 of this from the kitchen standpoint. And it's going to go hit your table whenever it hits your table relative to that. So that is intentionally their model. You're not hearing, we need all of your order from those restaurants. You're hearing we need all of your order from traditionally appetizer, entree, dessert restaurants.
Right. Sure.
Right. And so a lot of the times those restaurants, at least the good versions of them, train their staff on how to course things, And so we constantly, and this is a really good example, right? We really should do this prior to Celtics and Bruins games. Like, we should say we're not taking any orders until.
Oh, you're saying you should go against that? Yeah.
But you explain why you're doing it.
And we try to. We don't do it.
Right.
But that would be a good day for us to do. Those would be good days for us to do that on, because people don't want to come as early as they should.
Right.
Right. It's a 7:00 game. They're not going to get there till 5:30, 5:45. And now we've got to serve 200 people dinner.
And they get pissed at you when they're going to be late for the game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And so we tell the servers, particularly on the first half an hour of the first turn on those nights, stand in longer at your tables. Find somebody in the table who is an advocate for the group and for you. Find the host, ostensibly, and ask them what they were thinking about having for dinner tonight. Because you get one person's entree order at that table, Might have taken you 3 minutes to get that person to decide between the chicken and the salmon, but you get that one person and everybody else at the table is going to fall in line by the time you have the first entree.
But your menu is even tricky because it is very like snack oriented, I would say. I mean, you have entrees and burgers and sandwiches, but it is a very loose, like, you know.
You can kind of do anything.
It's not as clearly coursed out as some menus.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. It's not like Pammy's where you have 4 courses that are part of your dining experience and you choose from each one.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about the way Pammy's is going right now.
Food's great.
Food is amazing, but the core that you have, it's one. It's like 12 items, and you pick 3.
I think that's only in the dining room.
Correct.
I think you can still walk in at the bar.
Is it price fixed now? Is it?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
But the only thing is, like, it's it's all just stacked together, and you just pick 3. And it's kind of weird because summer's.
I'm not. That's
okay.
Don't get off subject.
Okay. Hey, this is my gripe section. I think I can.
It's his. He owns this.
Well, he can pick that as a second gripe, but we're not done with the first gripe.
You heard the music. All right, go ahead. Keep going.
By the way, if I went out with Drew and normally I sit down, I want to order something right away, like a few things in.
Yeah. We do that together.
If I'm there, Drew's like, no.
No, I'm into that though. Get some snacks.
So
going.
Drew thinks he's more of a savvy diner than you are.
No. Listen.
Well, I'm usually out with two 9-year-olds.
The idea of sitting and getting snacks going is the basis of all meals I'm at. And when they say no, I'm like, the fuck? Like, what do you mean? Like, so that's what caused this issue. Yeah. Anyway. All right.
It is nice though when the server says, yeah, absolutely. Just want to give you a heads up. These items take a little bit long. Like the education, the opportunity to educate the diners, I think is huge.
And we try to do that. Yeah. Like, particularly on game nights, we say, if you're looking to get there on time, we really suggest that you decide on your entrees as soon as possible, and we'll get those in the kitchen. Yeah. But it really does, and this is something that I think is hard to understand if you haven't been in, you know what, Drew? I know where we're doing our next podcast on location.
Okay.
We're going to do it in the kitchen at Alcove pre-game.
Just that would be amazing.
We should just we shouldn't say anything. We should just let it air and hear what's going on.
And you can come watch the difference between when you have stuff coursed out and the kitchen can manage its flow from that perspective versus when you have individual tickets for apps and entrees. Well, it really is dramatically different on the efficiency of the kitchen.
Yeah. And when I hear, we don't do it that way, I think, you can't handle it? Like, what's going on in the kitchen? Like, that's my first reaction.
I think that the people who are doing it believe that they are trying to put out the best, that is the way to put out the best product possible. And they would make an argument that, okay, it might be frustrating to you in that moment, but the product you're going to receive is so much better that your ultimate experience is going to be better.
Okay, then don't come to my table every 3 or 4 minutes asking for the order when I've told you 100 times.
That could just be a novice server.
Okay, I think it was. By the way, I was at a restaurant recently, a new one in Charlestown, newish, and I'm just going to say in Charlestown. We ordered it all. We ordered it all together. We ordered it all together. I don't know if that was encouraged by them or not, but we happened to order it all together. Salads came. We had our salads for about 3 minutes, and our entree showed up. And I'm like, this is, I look at Minnie, I'm like, this is why I don't order all at once. Because it seems like whenever we do, the flow of the meal is ruined. It was not good. But again, like, I think that was just.
But do you say, I don't have a problem if a guest says to me, or if I'm out, I'll say this. I've done this out to dinner with you.
Yeah, tell me.
Like,
give me
where I say,
advice.
we would like these things first, and then we'd like these things second.
Yeah, maybe the idea that it was a salad wasn't clear enough that we'd want some time with it.
You ate a salad in a restaurant?
That's how you start every meal. I'm down with that.
You do?
I thought you didn't eat vegetables.
Well, you do.
Well, there's got to be a fried component on the salad.
But you'll go out and start with a salad now?
Yeah, last night we were out to dinner. I had salad. I like
an appetizer.
Salads. I do like salads, yeah. It's tempting to get the wings.
Yeah.
But,
You've come a long way.
Yeah, I have. Okay, you ready for another gripe? We have a few more minutes. Devices at tables with servers.
Wait. Hold on.
Let me start over.
Device at tables or device ordering?
He means handheld ordering at tables.
That's what I thought.
He doesn't mean like they're on their iPhone.
I like a connection with the server. I like discussion. I like to ask them questions. And when they are buried in their toast device, clicking away at what we want, I feel like there's a total lack of communication and, it's awkward.
Different than if they had a notebook?
No, different than or they just talk to me and then they write it down after or whatever.
You think this is a device
I have no
issue?
problem. I don't care if people memorize my order. I'd rather they just write it down and get it. But yeah, I do think it's a device issue.
Okay.
Thoughts? Jesse obviously doesn't know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about.
I know why you're hesitant.
Why am I hesitant?
Because I think you're going to have devices. You're considering devices.
Yeah, but can I just say one thing?
I made the decision.
Before you...
Yeah.
If you're a server, whether or not you have a notebook or a toast device in your hand...
It's different. They're searching for stuff. They're clicking through menus.
But if you're a good server and you're engaging with your customer, what does it matter?
I've yet to find it. I've yet to experience it. They're always locked in on that device.
I've taken your order on a device before.
Yeah, I people take orders from me on devices, and I don't see an issue.
I think it's rude.
What?
Yeah.
I think I'm not on board with this one.
I like the interaction. And writing something down is very different than, okay.
But you can still get the interaction.
This is the... They're clicking through the menus, right? Looking, where is that? He wanted no alcohol in that drink. Yeah, and then my wife will, hold on a second. It's annoying. Don't like it.
Tom.
Look at everybody.
Tom.
Yeah, what's your decision?
We are putting the regular POS terminals in the dining room at Hook and Line, and we're going to use handhelds in the bar and on the patio.
Okay. Well, I will give you...
The bar area.
I will give you feedback.
I'm sure you will. But it took me a long time to get to that decision. And truth be told, like, we're still wiring for the regular terminals to go in the bar area just in case I really can't stand it.
Is that your hesitation? Am I on to something, or is it another reason?
I have multiple reasons.
Yeah.
One is just general staff education. Like, the server is going to rely on that piece of technology instead of knowing what the vodkas are in the restaurant. And I had an experience in Miami where the server didn't know what the tequilas were. And
so they pulled it up.
They just pulled it up and they start reading them as they're listed on the thing, which, isn't actually the full name, and the way in which the number of characters you have. It's a whole thing. But I do think, so I had an interaction with a guest today where he walked in and he goes, walk-in guest, and he goes, do you have a menu? And I said, of course. And he goes, well, not every restaurant has a menu anymore. Sometimes you have to pull it up on your phone.
Right.
And I said, we still have menus. Like, I think the QR code is probably, if you're to look at technology in restaurants relative to removing the sense of hospitality you receive from the service team, I think the QR code is more detrimental than a server with a handheld table.
Agreed. It drives me nuts.
Well, I also know that you and I both have like a pure love and joy of a menu, like a well-designed menu. So it definitely, it adds to the experience of the restaurant. My issue with the QR code is when you go to the website and the website's not formatted well to see the menu. Like sometimes it pulls up this PDF of a normally printed menu and you're zooming in and you can't even follow along. That's a problem.
I agree that you and I have an appreciation for menu design. We've even done a podcast, not your podcast, but somebody else's podcast on it. But I just think it just removes the interaction you have with the other guests more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It also changes your experience with the menu. Like when you can see a full menu and you can see the whole thing.
Yeah, you can plot
scrolling down.
Yeah, you can plot out your meal.
It's different. It's a different customer experience. And I hate to do this, Drew. I do agree with you on one thing with the handheld part.
You hate to agree with Drew?
He hired me.
No, I'll give you an example, right? Like I totally hear you, which is that my wife who has celiac, like oftentimes at restaurants, they'll have to put in additional information about the menu ordering. And like, it is true. I see the servers, like it's more of a process when you're with the handheld, when you're typing stuff in, and it actually does take them away.
Correct.
And it's not their fault. It takes them away from the engagement and the conversation at times. It doesn't bother me, but I understand it adds time and it removes interaction when if you were writing it down on a notebook, it's GF and you're able to talk more and make eye contact. I do get that for those items that take longer to enter into a handheld.
Well, it's also the screens look different. It's smaller. They don't format the same way. It doesn't create the same consistency for them. But if you talk to Toast about it, it increases turn time by like 10%, something like that. I forget. They didn't give me an exact number, but they said it increases. I had a whole meeting.
You don't have to walk with your notebook over to totally.
Literally last week I had this. Yeah. I was like, okay, we're doing terminals everywhere last week. And I got into a meeting and they were like, are you sure it speeds everything up a lot? And I was like, where do we care most about speeding up that experience is in the bar.
Right.
And so the dining room, we want the more traditional classic, longer multi-course experience, and that'll be more frequent. Where the bar will be
that.
more raw bar, will be
It's a little more casual.
It's a little more
so
casual. So that's how we came to that decision.
Okay.
It's also more streamlined ordering, I bet, in some ways at the bar. Or no, it's the same menu, I guess.
We don't. You want to talk about one of my restaurant pet peeves?
Yes.
Bar menus that you can't get in the dining room.
It's time for Tom's gripes.
Well, I was saying like sometimes the people say in the bar, well, that's not true. People eat at the bar all the time. Carry on.
Yeah, no, it's a good gripe.
Yeah.
That's legit. Yeah. By the way, one last thing on the devices. It is also different at a high top. I know it sounds crazy, but when the person's at your level, you're not looking through the device. When they're leaning over you with that device, there's just like this barrier, and it creates for a really awkward
I mean, we use them on the patio at Alcove, and I think you have to really think about the different styles of service that you're offering. And like we design restaurants that have different spaces to them, and the different styles of service in each space.
Correct. Yeah.
Are reflected in what
I think that's
those
fair.
decisions.
That's an interesting way of going about it. Yeah. All right, I have 14 more. No, I'm just we can just do one more because this is getting lengthy. On your open table,
Mm-hmm.
Can you select seating type?
Yes.
But outdoors and...
We have outdoor regular, which is main dining room, and then we have high tops.
Okay. So between the regular and high top,
we actually often don't put the high tops available online.
Sure.
But
sure. That's admirable, because what I've experienced for at least 3 times in the last year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's enough for me to be annoyed, is having a seat preference, showing up at the restaurant and getting directed to an area that is the last place I wanted to sit. And I look, and one of them is very near this restaurant, and the person just claimed they messed up. One of them is in Cambridge, and it's literally kind of a basement-like restaurant. And I'm like, yo, I specifically in the resi clicked on it, and here I am. You're taking me down to the basement.
I forgot about this one because you previewed me on this one too last week.
Yeah.
By preview, I mean he complained to you previously about that?
Yeah. and I brought it up to one. I have a team member who worked at that restaurant before.
Yeah.
And I brought it up to him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that space is terrible. Nobody wants to sit down there where they put True every time."
I would not have gone to the restaurant, and we invited friends, and I said to them, this place is great, the food is great, and don't worry, I got us like tables. I was able to select. Sure enough, we show up, and the person grabbed, follow me. And I'm like, oh, Mindy, here we go. Special care. They start going down those steps. I go, whoa. Oh my God, it drives me crazy. But I don't know why these restaurants even offer it if they're not going to honor it. What's going wrong? I don't know. But there's no way you can argue with that gripe. That is an annoying thing. Do I win? At least win you over on that one?
I mean, we do our best to always try to do that. Yeah. I mean, there are sometimes...
But it seems like if it's for you that something happened, these restaurants seem to ignore them completely.
I'm just happy to be out.
Yeah, I mean,
you're like, I'll go to the basement. I don't,
I'm just happy to be here.
Maybe that's enough. Speaking of just being out, it's very nice to be here and to be with 2 friends on a podcast. This is pretty great. Thanks for having us. And
thanks for having me.
Looking forward to your opening at some point, hopefully this year.
Definitely this year.
Yeah.
We already talked about this.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
But I don't want to jinx, things happen, and I don't want to be responsible, for a mega jinx.
If we don't open this year, it's Drew Katz's fault.
But you still don't like to put a date, you still don't like telling people.
I hate the date thing.
I hate asking people going through this, how's it going? Because I know they get asked that all the time. So if you feel like I don't ask you enough, it's just because I'm like,
You're also on all the emails.
Yeah, so we are doing the branding for this project, which has been a real treat because we like working with Tom. It'll be our second time working together. So it's very rare we are brought in on a project this early. Usually it's like we're opening this restaurant in 3 weeks. We need a brand. I don't know why this sort of stuff gets put off so much, but you'd be amazed at how late we are brought into the game. So it's really fun to be a part of the construction and sort of looking at the interior design. We're designing wallpaper, which I think will be really cool. Brooke's really killing it. So I'm excited to meet you here when you're open. And Maybe we'll play this over the loudspeaker.
We'll do the gripes. We'll do real time gripes.
Yeah. Oh, here comes Drew.
Drew's going to do, it'll be your first live broadcast. It'll be opening night and Drew will just do gripes of his active
live.
service.
We should record live from a...
we could do Drew's gripes as a separate podcast and just have you on every week complaining.
I love it.
It wouldn't necessarily be about food either.
No, of course not.
I have many gripes about it. Just pick an industry. Yeah. We didn't even get to like websites and menus and all that stuff, but we'll save that maybe for a personal conversation because nobody needs to hear it.
Family, friends. I mean, you could just...
Well, we almost got into the Thanksgiving dinner. That has been historically just a pain in the ass. I mean, it should be easy, but it becomes a whole thing. Most recently, because I'll say, my mom probably doesn't listen to this, but if she does, sorry. We had a very nice meal, and Tom was gracious enough to bring extra stuff out. And my mom starts complaining, at least that's how I'm hearing it, about how much food there is. Oh my God. The summer. It gets worse and worse. So finally I turn to her, I go, look, Mom, we'll fucking take it home. Like he's being very generous. Like, so, and I'm like, if only you had been to some meals that Tom has treated us to, because I've had salad bowls the size of my car show up, so anyway, there's always something. And I always have gripes. So you want me in your restaurant, don't you?
I mean, it's Curb Your Enthusiasm 2.0, right?
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. Look, thank you. I have to pack all this shit up. It's gonna
good luck. I'm out of here.
Can I have a key to the space? I'm going to need it. They're going to show up tomorrow working on construction. I'm going to be packing up. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thanks for showing us around.
Yeah, really cool. And until next time.
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.